And Tim Keesee, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Hutch. Very good. Thanks.
I've been looking forward to this interview. I have enjoyed the depth of this book, Dispatches from the Front, Stories of the Gospel's Advances in the World's Most Difficult Places. And before we get into it, I want to mention you. Now, what class were you at GW here? You're from here?
Class of 76.
So shout out to everybody in that class. And you
Yes.
One thing I thought was very nice is you dedicated the book, says, to my father, Carlton Eugene Keesee, a hero in the battle of life. He was a nice guy. I knew him.
Yeah, he thought a lot of you, too. I was blessed with a great father and mom who are with the Lord now.
Mm-hmm.
But, a brother there, two sisters, and a lot of very special friends in the Danville area.
And when you think of life there and life at GW, it's a dramatic change from a comfortable small town to going to war zones where sometimes you are the target because either the government or other competing religions don't want you there. Have you ever had any second thoughts?
No, I mean, certainly I've looked back in the sense of I still feel deeply connected to my home and family, but I really feel like my family has gotten bigger over the years as I've been in so many different places and situations and lived with people in sometimes very harsh circumstances. But there's been some just beautiful demonstrations of compassion and mercy and courage that really I've been blessed to be connected with people like that.
And sometimes intense circumstances in life can create a relationship in your spirit with friends that becomes as close and sometimes even closer than some family members.
It's true.
I want to read some of the chapter titles in this book. The book is very well written. Dispatches from the Front. We're talking with Tim Keesee, who's from here in Danville, lives in South Carolina now. Here are some of the chapter titles. The End of an Empire, the Former Soviet Republics. Children of Cain, the Balkans. 10 Sparrows, China. Chapter 4 is Within a Yard of Hell, Southeast Asia. Chapter 5 is Souls of the Brave, Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan. Chapter 6 is Amazing Grace, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea. Chapter 7 is Prison Break, the Horn of Africa and Egypt. And I want to go to Chapter 8, Dimmed by Dust, Afghanistan and Iraq. If you don't mind, Tim, let me read a paragraph or two from this and then ask you what happened next.
Okay.
You talk about going to Afghanistan, and of course it would be a little unsettling getting on a flight and you have American soldiers on there with their gear going to the same place. That has to have been eye-opening. But you're talking about one of the people that you worked with, and we will relate later on that this is different than, most people's idea of a missionary where they preach and go home. These people are working with people's bodies, helping heal them, building wells for people. But Gail Williams, who was a physical therapist and had worked with particularly kids who had been injured by landmines, was gunned down by the Taliban just a few streets away. And we went over to the elementary school right away to watch the children of the Christian workers while they sorted things out and implemented a lockdown because it had become evident that foreign aid workers were being targeted for assassination, as in you folks. And the Taliban claimed credit for killing her for the crime of spreading Christianity. And so she joins the ranks of others, those of whom, as Hebrews 11:38 says, of whom this world was not worthy. And now Gail stands in the light, her wounds healed by wounded hands, and she's safe, comforted, and home. That's how it looks on the other side of the thin line of life. On this side, though, there are questions, sorrow, and blood on the back street in Kabul. What did you folks do after that? She was in your group. How did it affect them, and where did you go from there?
Well, we were certainly in shock at the suddenness of her departure. We found out shortly afterwards that she had been just really tracked for several months, actually, and then she was walking on her way to work that morning and was taken. But one thing that really struck me was we had a memorial service for her after she went home, and there were the number one prayer request of the workers there was pray that our organizations won't make us go back home. Instead of pray that we can get out of here, because clearly workers were being targeted. 2 days later, 2 more were were killed in another part of Kabul. So it was a hornet's nest. But that was their prayer. Pray that our organizations won't make us go back home. And a lot of them were involved in community development work and health care for the sake of the gospel. And they were the hands of Jesus to these people. And another dear friend of mine who was killed 2 years later, Cheryl was her name.
Mm-hmm.
She was deeply involved with helping women's health needs, nutrition. The infant mortality rate in Afghanistan is horrific. 1 out of 4 kids do not reach their 5th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah.
And as you talk about being targeted for assassination there just because of your religion, on the other hand, there's something about a life where a person is so dedicated to what they believe that helping other people becomes more important than their own safety. And you are surrounded by people like that, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes, like the friend of mine that I just mentioned that was involved with nutrition and women's health and planting orchards. You know, you just couldn't measure Cheryl's life by the number of years that she's lived, because 32 is just too few. I mean, she was an amazing woman, and you know, to me, I want to measure her life by the grace that she poured out into others, and especially others who had no category for the kind of love that she was showing them. So it's very special.
We've got about 3 minutes here, but I'll tell you something. The world you are describing, where they're even targeting healthcare workers because they are Christians, is very different from our world here in America of American Idol and malls and Super Bowl parties. But I wanted to make the point, while you are here, you realize that if you want to show what you believe, you've got to show that it makes a difference in this world. And you do things other than preach. For example, in one of the chapters here in chapter 6, you talk about well drilling in Liberia. How much does it help these people, and how bad is it when they don't even have clean water before you go in there and help them by building wells?
Right. Well, it's hard to answer that because it's so immeasurable. I mean, the importance of clean water, which we don't have to walk a mile this morning to some dirty river and get a bucket and fill it and carry it back to another mile back to our house. So I was part of a well drilling team in West Africa for a time, and again, another act of mercy that blessed people and opened doors but opened hearts to the gospel. But there was a practical demonstration and genuine help. And the man who led that effort didn't even start until he was 50 years old. He was a home builder over in this country,
mm-hmm.
and just became, he had, Christ changed his life, and he said, you know, how can I invest my remaining years? And it was drilling wells in Africa. So he downsized his house and went over there, organized teams, and he's drilled hundreds of wells. And it was an amazing day when we struck water. I was with him on one of those drillings, and kids there playing in water for the first time in their life. They'd never played in fresh water, and much less had it to drink. So it was a special day.
And there's something about looking into the eyes of children like that and knowing that you've changed their lives, and by giving them fresh water, you've actually lengthened a lot of their lives.
Absolutely.
For the sanitary advantages there. We've got about a minute left. We're talking to Tim Keesee, his book, Dispatches from the Front, talking about going to war zones, talking about going to places that would be dangerous for anybody. He's from here in Danville and lives in South Carolina now. And I want to just touch on this very briefly. You've also, in Chapter 7, got a wonderful story about an Ethiopian man who rescued a homeless boy who had slept with the dogs to avoid hyenas. This is a very different world you go to, isn't it?
Very different. And this man had, he has a long backstory, which I tell in the book, which is fascinating. But again, later in life, he was struck by the needs of a child, and that led him to help a lot of other homeless orphan children. And so he would find them and rescue them and educate them, and he developed a team, of course, to do all of the things that kids need. But one of the boys was, no one knows who his father or mother are, and he just lived in the wild, and he slept with wild dogs at night because of the hyenas in that part of Ethiopia. And my friend Michael found this boy, clothed him, bathed him. He had never bathed, and named him. He didn't have a name, and so he named him Taraku, which means lion, and because he was a survivor. And when I met Taraku, he was just a fine young man. He was showing me his room. He had never slept in a bed before, but he was very proud of his bed, his little bed that he'd make every day. And he was in first grade at the time, and it was just a beautiful story of transformation just because of a simple act of love. I mean, sometimes we think we have to do these great things, and we never do the little things, the little acts of mercy that make such a difference in people's lives.
Well, we're talking with Tim Keesee this morning, wrapping this up. Tim, the stories that we will read in your book and see in the video that's on our website, we read these stories and we go, wow, but you live it every day. I appreciate what you do. The book is Dispatches from the Front. You can get it at Amazon, Dispatches from the Front by Tim Keesee. Tim, it's been great having you on. Son of Danville here, living in South Carolina now. I appreciate your group, and we're going to keep you in our prayers, man.
Thanks, Hutch. Thanks very much.
You have a great day, sir.